The energy use of data centers has become a political hot potato for the AI industry. Data centers famously gobble up both electricity and water, and some areas near new data centers have seen a hike in bills. But OpenAI's Sam Altman has said criticism of AI's energy use aren't fair.
One of the things that is always unfair in this comparison is people talk about how much energy it takes to train an AI model relative to how much it costs a human to do one inference query. But it also takes a lot of energy to train a human. It takes like 20 years of life and all of the food you eat during that time before you get smart. And not only that, it took like the very widespread evolution of the 100 billion people that have ever lived and learned not to get eaten by predators and learned how to like figure out science and whatever to produce you, and then you took whatever you took. So the fair comparison is if you ask ChatGPT a question, how much energy does it take once its model is trained to answer that question versus a human? And probably AI has already caught up on an energy efficiency basis measured that way.
Well, that's reassuring. Don't worry about AI's energy use, because if we really care about energy use, we could kill the people. I suppose we'll have less of us. I mean, I think the argument he's trying to make, well, I don't know what argument. If you were being incredibly generous, you would say he was responding to a kind of point which is saying, AI is not that impressive because if you have this much energy, then you can make something intelligent. We did it ourselves. Now, AI is very impressive. Like, regardless of the amount of energy it uses, it is an impressive technology. I say this all the time. But the criticism of AI's energy use is that we might want to use that energy for something else. And he's saying, well, if you want to save energy, it's the people who are remarkably inefficient. Helena, do you like the implications of that argument?
I mean, it's real kind of part and parcel of how much brain worms you have to have imbibed before you kind of are allowed into the kind of tech bro sphere in terms of how you perceive the concept of humanity, insofar as I think a lot of us, especially on the political left maybe, we view things that are done both in terms of the economy and politically to serve the interests of people. We have this humanistic understanding of how human society functions, and then we want to build an economy on top of that that serves the interest of people. Whereas if you become so captured by cultural neoliberalism, where you commodify everything to the point at which you think of, well, how can something be treated as solely as an economic unit, including people themselves, and go, well, this economic unit uses as much energy as this economic unit that isn't human, and therefore you can make a comparison as such. The only way in my mind I think you can ever get to that position in the first place is if you just don't perceive human life as having value outside of an economic interaction and go, well, energy costs money, we have to produce energy, but why would we spend energy on people when we can produce something that is better in terms of this economic output? I'm like, well, machines are just economic output, but humans are rational actors who have all sorts of hopes and dreams that they want to use economic access to be able to fulfill. And that's my position when it comes to how we build an economy. I think it's broadly how most people in the chat probably agree as well about how to build an economy, is for the concept of increasing human flourishing. But it appears in the tech bro realm, the creation of a better future only involves human flourishing by happenstance. It only will happen to involve those things if that is how the market mechanisms direct that it should. And if that isn't a kind of base assumption of right-wing economics and neoliberalism and a kind of almost religious belief in market logic as the defining characteristic of human society, and then I don't know what else is.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on how we should think about the economy. I think there's something else going on. I mean, I think that's also partly behind what Sam Altman is saying. I listen to quite a lot of kind of tech podcasts and read their blogs and stuff. And I think there's another ideology in here, which is kind of posthumanism. And what you'll often hear with some of the Silicon Valley tech bros is instead of sort of like people and machines, they talk about intelligences. So they say sort of like humans are intelligences and then machines are intelligences. And instead of seeing this as about sort of profit and efficiency, you can see their aim is to maximize the number of intelligences in the universe. And we should organize our resources so as to do that maximization. And so it's not necessarily, they're not always, I mean, clearly Sam Altman is fussed about the profit of his company and wants to get very rich. But when it comes to sort of the ideology they're articulating, it's often that sort of there's nothing inherently special about humans. What we're interested in is understanding the universe. I think that's Elon Musk's sort of slogan for XAI, but lots of them talk in a way. And therefore, if it's a fleshy intelligence doing the thinking, or a silicon intelligence doing the thinking, it would be parochial to have a preference between those two. And if the silicon intelligence is more effective given the resources we have, we should direct our resources towards the silicon intelligence. So it's sort of, I see where you're coming from with the neoliberalism argument, but I think their argument is almost more novel than that. I don't know what you think.
I mean, I can understand that. I mean, you probably have interacted with more kind of primary material coming out of the AI sector than I have. So if that is the case of the way in which that you characterize these people's arguments, if these people didn't have the huge amounts of power that they did, it'd be quite funny, really. It'd be quite cringe in that these people think that they're living in the science fiction world of the films that they watched as a child, right? And you know what? Whilst I think that the ideology itself would be dangerous, I would look at these people with pity rather than with the level of kind of the skepticism that I have right now, because these people have huge amounts of power. These people are going to be potentially shaping the future of society and the future of the economy through the amount of economic power that they have attained. And them being able to continually self-rationalize what I feel very an anti-human ideology, again, that equates the human intelligence with that of just like any other machine. And given how much influence they have in some world governments, especially the most powerful government in the world, kind of terrifies me. I'm not sure about anybody else at home.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can have a philosophical argument about why you think. I mean, I like fleshy intelligences because I suppose I am parochial in the sense that I like people and humans, and I think that if you could create something similar in a machine, I think probably don't do it because it just comes with so many moral quandaries. I don't. If they do develop hopes and dreams, and then we're sort of enslaving them all to help us, that's a bit grim. If we're giving them hopes and dreams and then they have agency and can kill us all, that's a bit scary. That's why I feel a bit like let's not go there. But what I find is remarkable with statements like that from Sam Altman and some of the podcasts I've been listening to where they talk about posthumanism and sort of why we shouldn't be parochial and have more attachment to the fleshy intelligences than the silicon intelligences, is how anti-democratic it is. Because clearly, whether or not you think we should be sort of post-humanists or transhumanists and not have a particular attachment to humans, the humans are not going to consent to that. We're not okay with that. I don't want to be replaced by the silicon intelligences. So clearly there are enough people, though, in Silicon Valley who think that sort of like it doesn't matter what other people think because the future is going to be determined by a few thousand people working in a few very well-funded companies in Silicon Valley, and everyone else, screw them. That's sort of how I read the culture coming out of Silicon Valley at the moment and how I read what Sam Altman said there. If he doesn't realize how, terrifying what he said sounded, that's probably because of the kind of circles he's moving in, where saying that kind of thing sounds normal, right? Because I suppose they think that they're not going to be the ones who are sacrificed on the altar of silicon-based intelligence, I assume.